My martial soul is a talisman. No, it's a set of symbols. As long as my horse runs fast enough, the title, Douluo, cannot catch up with me. Hold back. It's not painful. Strive for miracles. Sword. Dad is a teacher, and Bushido walked out of the Holy Soul village, dressed in a green shirt and turning the Tao into a symbol. I am the Heavenly Master. Keywords of the novel. Douluo Tianshi no pop-ups, Douluo Tianshi TXT complete collection download, Douluo Tianshi latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Teaching Dad is a Master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Teaching Dad is a Master. In the southwest of the Tiendo Empire in Douluo continent, on the edge of the Fushino province, there is a small village with only about 300 households south of Nodding City. This kind of village is not very prominent on the Douluo continent. There are 8,000 without 10,000. Holy Soul Village. This is the name of this village. It is said that a soul saint once walked out of this village 100 years ago, which is the eternal pride of this village, and the Holy Soul Village is named after it. Holy Soul Village, a small wooden house is located in the center of the village, and not far from the wooden house, there are 2 thatched cottages, which are not very luxurious, but compared to most of the simple houses in the village, they are already very good. 2 thatched cottages, one large and one small, reflect a layer of golden radiance under the sunset. Under the sunset, an old man with a slightly hunched figure walked slowly towards the smaller thatched cottage with a cane, and gently knocked on the wooden door. Who? A slightly dull voice came from the thatched cottage, and the door was opened by a child who looked only 5 or 6 years old. The child's figure is not very smooth, but their skin is very fair. They are wearing a small green cloth long shirt with some patches, but wearing it on the child adds a completely different temperament from ordinary farmers. The child's pitch black eyes still reflect a depth that ordinary people do not have, making the child look complementary to the green cloth long shirt on his body. It's Shio, is your father at home? The old man asked knowingly. The voice in the room just now was clearly not from this little child. The old man's cloudy eyes added a touch of kindness and other meanings to the child, and soon a bright smile appeared on his face, asking. Grandpa Jack, come in, Dad is at home. The child's eyes flashed with a hint of brilliance, and he turned aside to let the old man named Jack walk in. In the small thatched cottage, there was only a simple bed and a desk. A middle-aged man in a blue shirt was sitting in front of the desk, lighting an oil lamp and holding a yellowed book in his hand. At this moment, the middle-aged man in the green shirt also looked up at the door. Under the light, the appearance of the middle-aged man and the child in the green shirt was already 70% similar, but more mature, with a hint of vicissitudes on their faces. The middle-aged man in the green shirt was full of a scholarly aura. Seeing the arrival of old Jack, he felt a bit strange and asked, Jack, what's up? Old Jack looked at the small thatched cottage inside, saying, Teacher Boo, your room is too small. I told you to move to the school dormitory a long time ago. Now that Ashio is still small, it's not convenient to be crowded with you when we get older in the future. The middle-aged man in the green shirt smiled gently and said, I am the teacher of the schoolhouse. The schoolhouse is a place for teaching. How can I, as a teacher, live directly in the schoolhouse for personal gain? Old Jack shook his head and showed a hint of helplessness on his face. He said, I really don't understand why you scholars are so stubborn one by one. By the way, I came here today to tell you something. Tomorrow is the annual Martial Soul Awakening ceremony, and Ashio's age is also the time for Martial Soul Awakening. Don't forget. Martial Soul Awakening. The child named Axiu gently clenched his fist, with a longing and a hint of unknown fear in his eyes. Yes, it's indeed time to calculate the sun. Thank you, Village Chief Jack, for taking so much trouble. The middle-aged man in the green shirt's eyes flashed with a hint of confusion, nodding and slightly bowing to old Jack. Old Jack quickly waved his hand and said, "Teacher Boo, you're too polite. Speaking of which, our village should all be grateful to you. Since you came to our village 6 years ago, you have also given us, these mud-legged people who have been facing the yellow soil and facing the sky for a lifetime, an opportunity to change their destiny." Old Jack sighed and looked at the child beside him with a smile, saying, "Shio, let's watch him grow up. This child has been smart and sensible since childhood, and he will definitely have great success in the future. Maybe he will have a chance to become a soul master tomorrow." The middle-aged man in the green shirt also smiled and said, "Borrow Jack village chief's auspicious words. All right, I won't disturb you, Teacher Boo. I came today to let you know. Don't forget, and there are also several families' children who happen to be of age. I have to go and inform them." Old Jack seemed to remember something, furrowed his brows slightly, shook his head, and said, "Ah, Teacher Boo is knowledgeable and polite. I'm not worried about Ashio, but in the Tang Hao family in the village, the third child is also sensible. Unfortunately, Tang Hao is an alcoholic. I must talk about him well, and I can't let him delay the future of the third child." The middle-aged man in the green shirt smiled and said, "Brother Tang has a natural and free-spirited personality. The third child is also extraordinary and has their own blessings. Jack village chief doesn't need to worry too much." Old Jack shook his head and said hello to Axio before turning around and leaving. "Grandpa Jack, take your time." Ah Shio was well-behaved and polite. After Jack left, Shio, who was obedient and sensible, immediately changed his expression and looked at the middle-aged man in the green shirt with suspicion. He asked in a low voice, "Dad, are you a hidden peerless expert? See through the world of mortals living in this small holy soul village, or what kind of enemy to avoid? Don't worry, what kind of enemy do we have in our family? Dare tell me, and when my son wakes up his martial soul tomorrow, he will reach the peak of the mainland, and then avenge you. 30 years in the east and west of the river, don't deceive the youth, middle age, old age, or..." The child let go of himself a bit. The middle-aged man in the green shirt, Bu Zheng, slapped the child on the head and said angrily, "Don't read any idle books if you have nothing to do. I don't have any enemies, and you don't need to avenge me." Bu Xiu's heart skipped a beat and cautiously asked, "Dad, are you really a peerless expert?" He said that his father inexplicably moved to this holy soul village 6 years ago, and no one knows his background, nor has he told anyone about the past. Even Bu Xiu doesn't know who his mother is, only that she has died. Bu Zheng fell silent for a moment and said, "Let's talk about it tomorrow when you wake up your martial soul." "That's really it. Dad, how tall are you as a master?" Bu Xiu's eyes widened. Although she guessed that her cheap father had a mysterious background, she really confirmed that he was a master, which surprised him. But what followed was a surprise. After learning that this world's walking show is called Holy Soul Village, they already have an understanding. That's right, Bu Xiu is not from this world, or his soul is not from this world. After learning that this world is from Douluo continent, Bu Xiu was pleasantly surprised, expected, and fearful. After a series of emotions, Bu Xiu was able to calm down. He should have come to Tang San's novice village, Holy Soul Village. The cheap father of this life is the only teacher in Holy Soul Village, and he moved to Holy Soul Village 6 years ago with him in swaddling clothes. His background is extremely mysterious, and no one knows. As far as he knows, people in this world have something called a martial soul. At the age of 6, they will undergo a martial soul awakening. If the awakened martial soul is accompanied by soul power, they can enter the extraordinary realm. No matter how low the upper limit of this realm is, as long as it is extraordinary, it has already exceeded the ordinary time of the previous life. As long as you become a soul master, marry by Fume, and reach the pinnacle of life, it is not a dream. But Bu Xiu also knows how low the probability of people in this world having accompanying innate soul power is, and even if they have accompanying innate soul power, their innate soul power is not high, and their martial soul has little development prospects, and their lifelong achievements are limited. Therefore, this is a world that extremely tests the technology of reincarnation. The reincarnation is good. Both parents are soul masters, so the chance of awakening one's martial soul and possessing innate soul power is much higher. If both parents are not soul masters and there is no chance, then it is almost impossible to have soul power. Or 1 in 10 million would bet on a mutation in the martial soul, but this thing is not as reliable as genetic mutations. If one wants to mutate in thousands, the chance of becoming the good one is even smaller. Bushio was not entirely sure if he had a good pregnancy. After all, although he has been handsome throughout his life, his cheap father is just a small village teacher. The biggest advantage he brings to Bushio is that he can recognize and use all the words in this world at the age of 6. But now it sounds like his cheap dad is really extraordinary, a hidden expert. Bu Zheng sat back in his original position, opened the book and continued reading, casually saying, "It should be higher than the entire city of Notting. Higher than Notting City. Soul Master or Soul Sect. Forget it, it's not bad either. At least he's not an ordinary teacher. If that's the case, he might have to inherit his father's business and become the teacher of this holy soul village for the rest of his life, as old Jack had hoped. After all, the teacher is also good, he has food and drink, and is respected." "What, you speak up. As long as you can't become a soul master, even if you kill Bushio, you won't be able to leave Holy Soul Village. The outside world is so dangerous, and there are people fighting and killing everywhere. If you're not careful, there will be people killing and stealing goods. Only those with problems will go out. Although Xinghun Village is small, it is safe. At least it is also Tang San's hometown, so the war should not have burned here." Bushio was lost in thought, but Bu Zheng suddenly spoke up and said, "By the way, the Tang Hao family at the village entrance is not simple. Stay away from them if you have nothing to do. There is no need to flatter or provoke them. Of course, if you really provoke them, you don't have to be too afraid. When the sky falls, there will be an old father standing up. Can you withstand it?" Bushio rolled her eyes and realized that the one at the village entrance was a titled Douluo. Cheap old dad was a soul lord or soul sect, which could tell that Tang Hao was extraordinary. He was not surprised, but he didn't believe what old dad said. Bushio has always kept a respectful distance from Tang Hao's family, but Tang San often came to study with Bu Zheng after the age of 3, so they also had some interactions with each other, not familiar, but not unfamiliar, as they knew each other. It was not too late either, and I was thinking about something. After all, I was just a child, and after a while, Bushio fell asleep. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Martial Soul. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Martial Soul. The next day. The sky was bright, with a clear ray of sunlight shining down. The clear sky was refreshing and pleasant, and the clear weather seemed to be a good symbol for Bushio. Today is the day of awakening the martial soul. Bushio took a deep breath and got up from the bed with a nervous and anxious mood. After washing up, she walked directly to the Martial Soul Hall not far from the school building. It is said to be the Martial Soul Hall, but in fact, it is just a small wooden house about the size of the thatched cottage where the Bushio family lives. The Martial Soul Hall is the most important place in a village, and every year, the Soul Master Deacon from the Martial Soul Hall in Notting City comes here to awaken the martial souls of eligible children in the village. The school building is located next to the Martial Soul Hall, indicating that although Holy Soul Village is only a small village, it also attaches great importance to education. After all, Soul Masters only have a very small chance of being born, and the probability of going to a small village like Holy Soul Village is even lower. Most of the remaining people are still ordinary people, and they can read more books and learn more words. Whether they go to Notting City to be the butler of a wealthy family or to work as a grassroots employee in large institutions such as the Marshall Soul Hall and the City Lord's Mansion, it is a good choice. In this world, reading and literacy are privileges that only nobles and wealthy children have. In an ordinary village, having a school and a private school teacher is an extremely luxurious thing. Therefore, the villagers of Holy Soul Village also have great respect for the only private school teacher in the village. There are a total of 9 eligible children who have awakened their martial souls this year, and Buxiu Tang San is among them. Buxiu arrived early, but before he arrived, several parents had already been waiting outside the Martial Soul Hall, with a nervous and anxious expression on their faces. The awakening of martial souls is the most direct opportunity for them to change their destiny. If a family can produce a soul master, even if it is just the lowest level soul master, it almost means that they don't have to worry about their livelihood in the future. The status of soul masters in this world is extremely high. Ah Xiu, you're here too. Hurry in, the soul master from the Martial Soul Hall has arrived. An honest middle-aged man saw Buxiu's arrival and said enthusiastically, "Uncle Fu Gui." Buxiu greeted with a smile and walked into the wooden house of the Martial Soul Hall. After Buxiu left, the parents discussed again. Axiu Gu is Mr. Bu's son, and Mr. Bu is the most cultured person in our village. Perhaps Axiu Gu can really become a soul master. Wang Fugui said. Yes, Xiu is exactly the same as Mr. Bu. I heard from my 3 sons that Xiu was the first in the assessment every time, and he has learned 50% of Mr. Bu's ability. Another man also said. What's 50%? My kid said that Xiu has learned all the skills of Mr. Bu. Another person retorted. But they all seem to acknowledge that Buxiu is extraordinary and has the opportunity to become a soul master. Suddenly, a woman said in a faint voice, I wish Xiu didn't become a soul master. This way, when Mr. Bu goes in the future, he can inherit his father's legacy and continue to be the masters of our school, just like Xiu and Mr. Bu can stay in the school. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell silent. Wang Fugui exclaimed, Madam, what nonsense are you talking about? Mr. Bu and Brother Axiu are kind to us. If Brother Axiu can become a soul master, we should bless him. How can we curse him here? If it reaches Mr. Bu's ears and leaves in a fit of anger, what will happen? Do you think your child will be like you for a lifetime? We are not the only villages that long for Mr. Bu, and no one is allowed to say such things again. Right, what Big Brother Fu Gui said is right. The others quickly agreed, their voices also quieted down. The people in the village are all honest farmers who have never left this place in their lifetime. They have a lot of knowledge. For most of the villagers in the village, even the village elder Jack, Buxiu knows his thoughts well, but he won't say much. People are all selfish, and the more impoverished a place is, the more eager it is for knowledge. For Buxiu, if she can't become a soul master and stay in the Holy Soul Village for a long time, her status as a teacher is also good. At least she is respected in this village, has no worries about food and drink, seeks a beautiful wife, and has no major regrets in life. However, who would be willing to be just an ordinary person if they could be exposed to extraordinary things? Stepping into the wooden house of the Martial Soul Hall, Buxiu was also a bit nervous. This step may determine his future destiny. Whether to stay in the Holy Soul Village for a lifetime, from an unknown place, for an ordinary life, or to embark on the magnificent journey of a soul master, all at this moment today. In the wooden house, almost all the children arrived, waiting obediently with a tense expression on their faces. In front of the children stood a handsome young man with a jade tree facing the wind and a sword eyebrow star. The young man was dressed in white and powerful clothing, with a black cloak behind him and a fist-sized soul character on his chest. This is the standard attire for personnel directly under the Martial Soul Hall. Whether it is the temperament of the youth or the fabric of the clothes, there is a huge gap between them and the children of these poor farmers, which is also a gap in strength and status. However, this person's gaze was very calm, showing no signs of pride or arrogance, and there was no expression of superiority. Su Yuntao. Buxiu remembers this character from the original work. For the Soul Master world, Su Yuntao is just a small and insignificant figure, but for this ordinary small village, Su Yuntao is already a big figure who can determine their fate. Su Yuntao has a badge carved with 3 long swords on his left chest, indicating that he is a 3rd-level Great Soul Master. There are 10 major levels of cultivation for Soul Masters, from low to high. Soul Master, Great Soul Master, Soul Zun, Soul Sect, Soul King, Soul Emperor, Soul Saint, Soul Douluo, and Title Douluo. There are 10 sub-levels in a large level, which can be considered as level 100. However, level 100 is already the level of a god, and there has never been a legend of a god level in Douluo continent. Senior. Buxiu said politely. Su Yuntao nodded and said in a warm voice, "Don't be nervous. Wait next to me for a while. We can start when everyone is here. Don't make any noise." Yes. Buxiu hurriedly walked into the crowd and waited quietly. Su Yuntao nodded slightly when he saw this. The child's clothing and demeanor were not ordinary, and he was extremely different from most of the farmers he had seen. After a while, old Jack also walked in with a thin and weak child and saluted Su Yuntao, saying, "Hello, respected Master War Soul, I'm going to trouble you again this time." Tang San. Buxiu gave a faint glance at the frail child and quickly withdrew her gaze. Although Tang San looked malnourished, his skin was equally fair, with a pair of bright and lively eyes that were completely different from most children. However, at this moment, Tang San's eyes were also full of curiosity. "Alright, you said the same thing last year. Becoming a soul master is not that easy. I have already walked through 6 villages, and none of them have soul power or suitable martial souls." Su Yuntao said impatiently. "Yeah, it's not that easy to become a soul master. Only the descendants of those big families are more likely to become soul masters. It's really difficult for us ordinary people." Old Jack showed a bitter smile on his face, shook his head, and walked out of the martial soul hall. "Children, stand in a row." Su Yuntao clearly showed more patience towards these children and treated them kindly. 9 people immediately stood in a row, with Buxiu standing at the far right, dressed in clean green clothes and slightly taller than her peers. There are a total of 9 people, and there are quite a few eligible children in Holy Soul Village this year. I hope there is really one who can possess soul power. Su Yuntao let out a sigh in his heart, quickly adjusted his emotions, and smiled, saying, "My name is Su Yuntao, a level 26 soul master. I am your guide, and now I will awaken your martial souls one by one. No matter what happens, don't be afraid." Su Yuntao took out 6 black stones and a shiny blue crystal ball from his backpack and arranged them in a hexagonal shape on the ground, gesturing for Buxiu to stand up. Buxiu took a deep breath and stood in the center of 6 stones. "Don't be nervous, close your eyes and carefully understand." Su Yuntao smiled and said, and Buxiu obediently closed her eyes, nervously welcoming the next fate. A gust of wind emerged from the wooden house, and a flustered sound of footsteps seemed to come from beside her. Buxiu knew that Su Yuntao had already released his martial soul. Su Yuntao, who possessed a martial soul, closed his eyes and looked at the calm child in front of him. He had a higher opinion of Buxiu and explained, "Don't be afraid, this is my martial soul ability. When you become soul masters like me in the future, you will also have similar abilities." As he spoke, his soul power thrust into the black stones one after another. With his eyes closed, Buxiu felt a warm breath enveloping his body, indescribably comfortable. Amidst this warm airflow, something seemed to break in his body, and countless currents surged towards his right hand. Open your right hand. Su Yuntao's voice came. Bu Xiu opened her eyes. What appeared in front of him was a faint yellow, which had converged. A yellow talisman paper was quietly hanging in his palm, with nothing on it. Seeing the appearance of Huangji, Su Yuntao's eyes flashed with a hint of disappointment and he said, Wuhuan, Huangji, doesn't have much development potential, it's a pity. What is the use of an ordinary-looking yellow paper? Can we still use yellow paper to fight? If it were books, it would be better. After all, some books have some mysterious uses to some extent. Even Su Yuntao has heard of someone who cultivates a soul master through books, and it is extremely powerful, but it is just a yellow paper about the size of a palm. There is nothing on it, just a discarded martial soul. Su Yuntao shook his head in disappointment, but still held a glimmer of hope. After all, the child had many golden dots fused together. He asked, can you feel any peculiar ability of your yellow note? Bu Xiu thought for a moment, and the yellow talisman paper turned into a stream of light and flew out, then directly pasted it onto Su Yuntao's body. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Innate Soul Power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Innate Soul Power. What a fast speed. Su Yuntao was startled and grabbed the yellow talisman paper. With a gentle tear, the yellow talisman paper split open, even more fragile than ordinary paper. The light in Su Yuntao's eyes completely dissipated, and he shook his head and said, a useless martial soul with no development potential. Forget it, let's test your soul power. If you have soul power, although the martial soul has little potential, you can still become a soul master. Bu Xiu didn't pay much attention to Su Yuntao's evaluation. It was true that there were too many directions for the development of talismans in his cognition. In cultivation novels, talismans were an extremely common direction of development, and cultivators had very few talismans in their hands. The evaluation of martial souls in this world is still too crude. The key is whether there is soul power. Su Yuntao had already grabbed the blue crystal ball and placed it in front of Bu Xiu, saying, put your hand on the crystal ball. Upon hearing the words, Bu Xiu's mind moved and the yellow talisman paper had disappeared. She took a step forward and placed her white palm on top of the blue crystal ball. At this moment, he noticed that Su Yuntao's appearance had undergone a great change from before. His figure had swollen a lot, with gray hair, green eyes, and a proper large werewolf. This was the characteristic of being possessed by beast martial souls, with a certain proportion of his body becoming beast-like. Fortunately, his martial soul is not that of a beast. Otherwise, based on human aesthetics, Bu Xiu would not be interested in transforming into a werewolf. Thinking to himself, Bu Xiu also relaxed a lot. The palm was placed on the blue crystal ball supported by Su Yuntao's wolf claws, and the blue crystal ball suddenly burst out with a strong suction force. It seemed that there were streams of heat rushing into the crystal ball inside the body. Bright. Bright, said the child in surprise. A little blue light spread, and soon the blue crystal ball turned into a sparkling crystal ball. I have soul power now, it seems that Dad's genes are indeed good. The crystal ball lit up, and Bu Xiu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that he was qualified to become a soul master. Moreover, judging from the brightness of the crystal ball, his innate soul power should not be too low. 9 levels. Su Yuntao stared at the dazzling light on the crystal ball and was stunned. The first child to be tested has soul power, and it is still the type of innate soul power that can only appear in the legitimate lineage of a major sect. This is something he has never encountered in his career of hosting martial soul awakening ceremonies. Innate soul power level 9. Upon hearing Su Yuntao's words, a faint smile appeared on Bu Xiu's face. Fortunately, although she was not born with full soul power, she was definitely a top cultivation talent. The innate soul power ranges from level 1 to level 10, and the higher the level, the more outstanding the talent. Level 10 is the innate full soul power, representing the highest level of talent. Of course, there are also legends that innate soul power reaches level 20, which is already a talent only available in divine level martial souls. 9 levels, in a sense, as long as one does not deviate, the title Douluo can be said to be very secure. What else can Bushido not be satisfied with such outstanding talent? At least it's much stronger than the innate soul power without soul power and 2 or 3 levels, I don't know. Su Yuntao also recovered from his shock, with a regretful expression on his face. He said, innate soul power of level 9 is a talent that is difficult for disciples of major sects to appear in. Unfortunately, your martial soul is a useless yellow paper that can be torn apart and has no potential for development. It's really a pity that you can be listed as a disabled martial soul. This talent, even if it's just an ordinary farming tool, has good development. Forget it, let's move on to the next one. Thank you, Master Su. Bushido showed no signs of disappointment on her face and respectfully bowed to Su Yuntao before retreating to the back. Anyway, Su Yuntao awakened his martial soul for him. As Su Yuntao had previously said, with the grace of leading the way, Bushido followed Che's father to learn writing, as well as to learn how to be a good person and etiquette. Su Yuntao nodded slightly, feeling a bit regretful. A very sensible child also had the opportunity to embark on the path of a soul master, but unfortunately, he was a useless martial soul. The following children also awakened their martial souls one by one, including ordinary farming tools such as sickles and hammers, as well as useless martial souls like blue silver grass. However, no one possessed soul power, which indirectly proves how difficult it is for ordinary people to become a soul master. Blue silver grass, another useless martial soul. A small blue grass appeared in Tang San's palm, and the light in Su Yuntao's eyes completely dimmed. Tang San was the second among 9 children to be valued by him, but unfortunately, he was still a useless martial soul. Su Yuntao's mood is a bit lackluster. Yes, ordinary people can't have such a simple idea of giving birth to a genius. This should have been what he had anticipated long ago. Su Yuntao packed his things and had already planned to leave. But uncle, you haven't tested my soul power yet. Tang San's voice came, firm and persistent. What's so good about testing a useless martial soul like blue silver grass? Su Yuntao saw Tang San's persistence in his eyes and sighed, saying, all right, put your hand over here. After all, testing soul power won't waste much time. The blue light burst out from the crystal ball, which was even more dazzling than when Bushido checked just now. First. Innate soul power. Su Yuntao was already stunned. What kind of immortal village is this? First, a useless martial soul with innate soul power of level 9, and now another useless martial soul with innate full soul power of blue silver grass. Heartbeat. Su Yuntao felt like vomiting blood. Uncle, what is innate soul power? Tang San asked. The innate full soul power is the highest soul power that can be detected by the innate, which is the innate level 10 soul power. The higher the innate soul power, the better the talent for soul power cultivation. For example, your innate full soul power and Bushido's innate level 9 soul power are the top talents. Unfortunately, your martial soul is too poor and has little development potential. Even if your soul power improves, there is not much combat power. Whether it is fighting with people or hunting soul beasts, it is extremely difficult. Su Yuntao patiently explained to the two. Innate full soul power, innate 9th level soul power. Tang San's eyes flashed with a hint of strangeness, and he couldn't help but look at the child behind him who summoned the yellow talisman paper. If others didn't know him, how could he not recognize that the opponent's martial soul was a talisman paper? In previous lives, many Taoist masters were able to refine talisman's paper, treat illnesses and save people, issue edicts to ghosts and gods, and summon wind and rain. Such a martial soul would not be a useless martial soul. Similarly, can his blue silver grass really be a useless martial soul? The so-called useless martial souls are just that they have not yet discovered their true use. Tang Sanjing wanted to ask again. For him, the soul master was full of mystery, but Su Yuntao had already packed his things and shouted directly, "Old Jack." The door opened and old Jack greeted him with a nervous expression, asking, "Master, how are you? Are there any children in our village who can become soul masters this year?" Su Yuntao glanced at him and sighed, saying, "There are indeed 2 more, unfortunately." 2. Old Jack's eyes showed a look of uncertainty and suspicion, and he tentatively asked, "Master, what's going on here?" Su Yuntao said, 2 of these 9 children this year have soul power, and even one has innate full soul power and one has innate 9th level soul power. However, one's martial soul is blue silver grass, and the other is also a useless yellow note. Old Jack, you should know what this means. Blue silver grass. Yellow paper note. Innate full soul power and innate 9th level soul power, oh my goodness. Old Jack's face was even more disappointed. Blue silver grass of course knew, and another yellow paper note, Su Yuntao, had all said so it wouldn't be wrong. Master Su, do they really have no possibility of cultivation anymore? Old Jack asked unwillingly. Su Yuntao patted old Jack's shoulder and said, "Practicing can be done, but what is the possibility of evolution for martial souls like blue silver grass and waste paper slips? Waste martial souls are just waste martial souls, and practicing is meaningless. Alright, I'm leaving and I have to go to the next village." After all, Su Yuntao didn't say much and left directly. "Grandpa Jack, what is the soul ring?" Su Yuntao left, and Tang San immediately asked old Jack. "Grandpa Jack, I'll go back first." Bushio was not interested in learning what a soul ring is from Jack's mouth. His cheap father is a soul master, and what he learned from his cheap father must be much more accurate than what old Jack said, and he is not completely ignorant of soul masters. Third mistress, Axiu, the 2 children with soul power that the master just mentioned are not the same as you 2, are they? Old Jack asked in surprise, but it was also somewhat natural. If we choose 2 out of 9 children, these 2 children are indeed the most likely. Grandpa Jack, my martial soul is blue silver grass. Tang San said. Bushio also casually summoned the yellow talisman paper, which swayed lightly in the wind and said, "This is my martial soul." It is indeed a useless and weak note. Old Jack saw Bushio's martial soul, and his eyes also showed a complex expression. To be honest, on the one hand, he hopes that Bushio can become a soul master and leave the Holy Soul Village to go to a broader world. On the other hand, he also hopes that Bushio can stay forever, inherit his father Bu Zheng's career, and teach and educate people for the village. Old Jack's gaze became firm. Since this child had the opportunity to go out, no matter what kind of martial soul he was, he shouldn't be so selfish. Old Jack squatted down and looked at Bushio and Tang San, asking, "Axiu, mistress, tell Grandpa, are you 2 willing to go to a specialized school to learn the cultivation methods of soul masters? Only there can you have access to the knowledge of soul masters. Go out, of course. Since you have good innate soul power and good martial soul, Bushio doesn't have the idea of an ordinary life anymore. However, there is a soul master at home, and Bushio must have asked his cheap dad, Grandpa Jack, I need to ask my dad about this first." Tang San also answered the same question. Old Jack nodded and said, "After all, this is not a small matter. Teacher Bu is knowledgeable and polite. I'm not worried about Axia here. He will definitely let you go into the outside world, but it's the third party here. Sigh, third party, I'll take you home. Anyway, I can't let Tang Hao delay your future." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Cultivation Techniques. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Cultivation Techniques. Old Jack took Tang San back with anxiety. It's not that he doesn't value Bushio, but Bushio's home is located next to the martial soul hall. Bu Xiu's father is also the only knowledgeable teacher in the village, so he doesn't have to worry too much. On the contrary, Tang San's father, the lazy man, is well known far and wide. If it weren't for Tang Hao's cheap farming tools, he couldn't help but want to drive Tang Hao out of the village. Parents always worry more about bad children, and Tang San, with Tang Hao as his father, is such a bad child in old Jack's heart. Bu Xiu doesn't care about Tang San, and Tang San doesn't need him to worry about it. He always keeps his distance and doesn't provoke or care. Compared to Tang San, Bu Xiu cares more about her martial soul, Huang Fuji. The innate soul power is at level 9, and the yellow talisman paper cannot be just a useless martial soul. Su Yuntao and even most soul masters in this world have a too simple and rough evaluation system for martial souls. Those who can accompany level 9 soul power, even if Bu Xiu's physique is excellent and her martial soul quality is not enough, would definitely not have such high soul power. Ning Rongrong is also an innate 9th level soul power, and has been selected as the next generation leader of the Seven Treasures Glass sect. Even if Bu Xiu's martial soul is not an auxiliary type, his talent is not significantly different. In the history of Douluo continent, the martial soul of the person with extremely high innate soul power is the true abandoned martial soul. Bu Xiu is also very clear that for Huang Fuji, talking about hardness and flexibility is completely nonsense. A mage cannot compete with a warrior to see whose arm is thicker, right? It's not Kong Laofu, who is 8 feet tall and has a benevolent chest and a virtuous back. On the contrary, if the yellow talisman paper knife and gun are not damaged and water and fire are not invading, that is the problem he needs to worry about. Mage. This is Bu Xiu's positioning of his yellow talisman paper martial soul. However, apart from being extremely fast, able to fly autonomously, and easily stick to others, Bu Xiu has not yet discovered any more mysteries of the yellow talisman paper. Whether it is a martial soul or a beast martial soul, in addition to the special skills bestowed by soul skills, the characteristics of the martial soul itself are also the key to the martial soul. For example, knives are naturally capable of chopping people, sharpness is a characteristic of their martial soul, hammers are heavy and can smash people, dogs and wolves have a keen sense of smell, phoenixes can breathe fire, blue silvergrass has strong vitality, and the Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda can be used for treasure hunting. The development of these martial souls may not necessarily be inferior to their soul skills. The characteristics of his yellow talisman paper should not only be flying and pasting, but he has not yet researched them. While studying his martial soul, Bu Xiu quickly returned home. His home is not a few steps away from the martial soul hall. In the courtyard outside the thatched cottage, Bu Zheng lazily read a yellowed book while lying in the yard. Cheap dad Bu Zheng seems to have endless books to read. In Bu Xiu's 6 years of memory, Bu Zheng spent almost all of his time holding that book except for life. Sometimes, Bu Xiu was curious to see what Bu Zheng was reading, but Bu Zheng avoided it. Even if he secretly went to read it, he could only see a nameless book. It was precisely at this point that Bu Xiuzai vaguely felt the extraordinary qualities of his cheap father. Coming back. What is your martial soul? Seeing Bu Xiu, Bu Zheng put down his book, with a rare expression of seriousness in his eyes. Dad, it's yellow talisman paper. Bu Xiu replied. Yellow talisman paper. Show me. Bu Zheng hesitated for a moment and said. Bu Xiu nodded and raised his right hand. Heat surged out, and a yellow light rose in his palm. A slender yellow talisman paper floated and sank in his palm. The palm-sized rune paper has no words on it, but it gives people a refreshing and natural atmosphere. When Bu Zheng saw the yellow talisman paper, a bright smile appeared on his face and he said, "Not bad, it's my seed." Bu Xiu felt a bit helpless. Although his cheap father was a scholar, sometimes he didn't have the appearance of a scholar at all. Instead, he looked like a bandit. However, Bu Xiu's eyes also carried a hint of curiosity. Unfortunately, you did not inherit your excellent martial soul from Laozi. Laozi's martial soul is a book, shrunk from a book to a piece of paper, still a small piece of paper, it's a pity. Bu Zheng shook his head, looking regretful, but when it comes to his martial soul, the pride and self-satisfaction in his eyes cannot be concealed. Dad, is your martial soul really a book? Bu Xiu was a bit stunned. Bu Xiu always thought that his cheap father was a fake scholar. Bu Zheng smiled proudly and said, my enemies looked the same when they saw my Wulin. Those enemies, indeed. Dad, you hid in this small place under cover only after being chased by the enemy. What are the enemies of our family? Dad, please tell me. I will avenge you for your son. Your son is an unparalleled genius, and he will definitely avenge you in the future. Bu Xiu said with a clear expression. Bu Zheng choked for a moment and slapped Bu Xiu's head in anger, saying, what are you thinking, you stinky kid? You think your dad is the guy from the village. Don't worry, Dad is a scholar and always kind to people. Those unfriendly people are also gone. You just need to take care of yourself, so that I won't have to go out and wipe your butt in the future. Bu Xiu smiled foolishly. Although he was reincarnated as an adult, he still valued his cheap father in this life. Although there was a joking element in what he said earlier, if his family really had enemies, he would not show mercy. Of course, the prerequisite is that he can crush the other person, otherwise it's better to survive and develop. There is only one small life. This is the biggest experience that Bu Xiu has summarized after dying once, and crossing this kind of thing will never happen again, right? Fortunately, he has had good talent and luck throughout his life. His innate soul power is at level 9, and his martial soul is on a yellow talisman paper. His starting point is not bad, and as long as he doesn't waver, it is still possible to cultivate to a powerful level. Bu Xiu remembered old Jack's words and said, by the way, Dad, Grandpa Jack plans to let me study at Soul Master Academy in Notting City. What do you think? Anyway, his cheap father is a master even higher than Notting City, and he can be considered a little master. It's also right to ask his father for his opinion on future martial soul cultivation. Bu Xiu doesn't think that half of her memories from her previous life can just wander freely in this world. Just a simple example, even if a living human-faced magic spider stands in front of him, he doesn't know it, let alone the cultivation years of soul beasts at a glance. There is also the cultivation method of a soul master, which requires systematic learning. Fortunately, his cheap father is a soul master and can have more choices. Notting Soul Master Academy, it may be a bit small, but it's also quite suitable for you. Bu Zheng nodded and looked seriously at Bu Xiu. The warning said, don't be fooled by old Jack and other people who blow their soul masters to the sky, but your body foundation is there and your bones haven't grown. Even if you reach level 10 soul masters, you may not be a match for an adult farmer. Even if you become a soul master, a soul ring may still die in the hands of a rigorously trained soldier. Only by becoming a great soul master can one have some self-protection ability, so don't be reckless. In the future, when going into the outside world, you should also remember to be harmonious and make money, be kind to others, and cultivate not only through fighting and killing, but also through human relationships and worldly wisdom. However, Bu Zheng paused for a moment, with a hint of sharpness in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, if you have an enemy, you should also be like Dad, cutting down the grass and eliminating the roots. Only the dead enemy is a good enemy, you know. There seemed to be a strange force emanating from Bu Zheng's body, and the clear sunlight shone on him. A chill also permeated Bu Xiu's body. It seems that his father is also a decisive person in killing. Bu Xiu thought to herself, but a faint smile appeared on her face and she said, don't worry, Dad, I understand. Bu Zheng looked at his son in surprise. He was clear about the amount of murderous energy on his body, even if it was not something that a child could bear to reveal. Surprisingly, this kid could still laugh. Bu Zheng nodded slightly. This kid is actually a material from the mixed soul master world. What is your innate soul power? Asked Bu Zheng. 9 level, you're still careless, Dad. Didn't I tell you? However, just a 9th level dad shouldn't take it seriously. Dad, your innate soul power must be higher than mine, right? Bu Xiu asked with an innocent expression on her face. 9 levels. Bu Zheng's face showed a hint of surprise. This was already a fairly high talent. However, seeing Bu Xiu's proud smile on his face, he couldn't help but nod calmly and said, he's quite careless. It's not innate soul power, it's too embarrassing. Don't talk nonsense everywhere in the future. Bu Xiu pursed her lips and didn't continue to tease cheap Dad. She said sternly, Dad, I heard that soul master cultivation requires meditation. You are also a soul master, so you probably have your own unique meditation. When will you teach me? There are still 3 months left before the start of the Nodding City Soul Master Academy. He is not Tang San, born with his own martial arts and techniques. If he does not practice for 3 months, his soul power may naturally increase, but it can definitely be ignored. Moreover, the meditation method at Nodding Soul Master Academy is definitely just a rudimentary tool. No matter what extraordinary system of cultivation it is, the resources of martial arts are extremely important. Without a suitable martial arts, even if one has good talent, their achievements will be limited. He can't possibly lick Tang San and ask Tang San to give him the martial arts, can he? With Tang San's emphasis on the Tang sect, unless his own strength is sufficient to establish a sect, it is absolutely impossible to spread the Tang sect's martial arts externally, and licking them is useless. On the contrary, it's his cheap father who is at least a soul master. His martial arts should not be too bad, but if it doesn't work out, he can figure it out on his own when he becomes stronger in the future. As Bu Xiu's thinking spread, Bu Zheng said directly, read each sentence of the 1,000-character manual upside down, combined with the human meridian diagram recorded on page 7 of the medical book, which is the meditation you want. Take the meditation to practice on your own, don't disturb me. If you don't understand anything, ask me at night. I saw that some readers in the comments section wanted a group number. When Douluo was a wine god, he created a group with the number 734656650. Those who are interested can add it. The water group doesn't have much time, but I can almost read the content. New books, seeking recommendations, seeking collections. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. 1000-character chart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5000-character chart 1000-word spectrum, medical records. These 2 books are familiar to Bu Xiu, the former is his enlightenment book for literacy, and the latter can also be memorized by heart. Bu Xiu didn't expect that Bu Zheng had already passed on a meditation technique to him early on. I believe even if Bu Zheng didn't say it, as his knowledge grew in the future, he could also discover this hidden meditation idea in these 2 books. Bu Xiu was somewhat moved. Even if Bu Zheng drove away, he didn't care and ran into the thatched cottage with excitement. Started the first attempt of cultivation. Bu Zheng looked at Bu Xiu's anxious thoughts and couldn't help but shake his head and smile, with a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. Isn't it the same way when he first practiced? Soul Master, what a magical profession. On the plain yellowed books in Bu Zheng's hand, countless words flowed and turned into a torrent of words flying out, enveloping this small thatched cottage. In the thatched cottage, Bu Xiu sat cross-legged on the only wooden bed, with each character on the 1000-character chart appearing in her mind, corresponding to the human meridian diagram in medical records, forming a unique meditation technique. Using the meditation method recorded in the 1000-character chart, Bu Xiu quickly felt her sea of energy in the elixir. In the Qi Hai Dan Tian, a pale yellow soul power lingers. With a thought, the pale yellow soul power moved within his body along with his thoughts. Everything goes smoothly beyond words. You should know that ordinary soul warriors need a certain amount of time to use their dark thoughts properly when they come into contact with them, but all of this seems to go smoothly with Bushido. There are reasons why Bushido was born with a strong soul, as well as the cultivation of Buzheng in recent years, which has made him familiar with the 1,000-character chart and laid an extremely deep foundation. On the other hand, the words released by Buzheng outside the thatched cottage were also crucial. Under the influence of multiple factors, the first step of Bushido's journey as a soul master went extremely smoothly. Soul power runs through the meridians bit by bit, and wherever it reaches, the pores on the skin's surface corresponding to the meridian seem to open up. A cold feeling spreads, and soul power gradually grows stronger. About an hour later, the soul power passed through the meridians for a week, as if breaking through a limit. A continuous stream of heaven and earth energy converged, and the soul power in the Bushido Dan field instantly increased by a certain amount. A vague feeling of a bottleneck also emerged in Bushido's heart. Outside the thatched cottage, a gentle breeze rose and fell, and Buzheng opened his mouth wide. Breakthrough. This is only an hour. How could the breakthrough of soul power be so simple? It took him at least 3 months to break through from level 9 to level 10, and that's all. He is already exceptionally talented. It seems that this stinky kid's talent is even higher than I imagined, probably very close to the level of innate full soul power. This time's cultivation is likely to break through this boundary and directly reach level 10. Buzheng thought to himself, but the corner of his mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. Level 10, for soul masters, this is the true starting point. Before level 10, one cannot even be called a soul master. The level of 10 soul masters can also be seen. Before level 10, the title of soul master was soul master. Only after reaching level 10 and integrating the first soul ring can one be called a soul master. At the moment when his soul power broke through, Bushido also felt something. However, he did not stop practicing. On the one hand, the feeling of gradual increase in physical and spiritual strength during meditation is addictive. On the other hand, he also knew that level 10 was just a starting point. It seemed that after reaching level 10, cultivation was not important anymore. Anyway, as long as a soul ring was fused, it could reach level 11. But the master's theory is not wrong. After the soul master reaches the bottleneck, the soul power cultivated will still accumulate. The strength after entering level 10 and successfully integrating the soul ring breakthrough is also different. Similarly, even for the same level 10 perfection, the accumulated soul power will vary, and the cultivation level after merging soul rings will also be different. For a soul master, immediately fusing soul rings upon reaching level 10 is not the best choice. Undoubtedly, there is a certain difference in the speed of cultivating soul power at level 10 compared to level 11. However, the soul rings of different ages also provide different improvements in soul power and skill power for soul masters when they break through. After reaching level 10, the soul master continues to cultivate. Although the speed of soul power improvement is slower than that after direct breakthrough, the effect of soul power on body refinement and the total amount of soul power will not disappear. These attributes are precisely one of the key factors for the age of the fusion soul ring. Even in extreme cases, a person who is stuck at level 10 cannot merge soul rings for 10 years, and can even try to merge Millennium soul rings directly. However, the soul master's body will also age, and the time for golden cultivation is limited. If you spend 10 years on a realm card, just for a Millennium soul ring is not worth the loss. In the cultivation of a soul master, trade-offs are crucial. The truly correct approach is to solidify one's own foundation in each realm, and then choose to merge a soul ring with the highest possible lifespan, striving to maximize the benefits. In Bushido's view, not to mention Tang San who cultivates his soul power to the point where there is no room for improvement, it is really the level of accumulating future soul power below the limit. At least he must also cultivate his soul power to the level of 10 perfection, which cannot be improved. As time passed, the sun gradually set in the west. After awakening the martial soul from the martial soul hall, Buxiu continued to cultivate. In a blink of an eye, 5 hours had already passed. Bu Zheng's face became increasingly surprised, and by the end, it had even sunk, with a hint of anxiety in his eyes. If it weren't for the breathtaking walk inside the thatched cottage, he wouldn't even be able to resist breaking into the door. A person's energy is always limited, and although meditation does not consume much physical energy, carrying soul power day after day requires a huge amount of energy. A soul master who is initially exposed to meditation thoughts is energetic, and the duration of meditation may be slightly longer than normal. But for a child aged 6 or 7, depending on their natural talent, the first time they meditate can only last for 3 hours at most, or even less than 1 hour. However, Buxiu's first meditation has already passed 5 hours and has not yet ended. At first, Bu Zheng's eyes were only filled with surprise and joy. After all, the longer he meditated for the first time, the more gifted Buxiu's soul was. In the future, he would meditate longer than others and his soul power would increase faster. But time exceeded a certain limit, and Bu Zheng couldn't help but suspect whether Buxiu was forcibly exploiting his potential for cultivation. Too much is not enough. If you indulge in the pleasure of temporarily improving your strength and forcefully deplete your body's energy for cultivation, it's okay to do it twice a time. If you do it too many times, it will only harm your body and even lead to becoming demonic. It seems that after this time, we must remind Xiu'er not to practice too hastily. I also need to teach Xiu'er some soul master's theories bit by bit. Bu Zheng reflected anxiously. Fortunately, Bu Zheng did not wait for too long. After nearly 6 hours of cultivation, Buxiu walked out with a floating gait, his face a bit pale, but his pair of dark eyes were bright and lively. Bu Zheng quickly welcomed him and said with concern, "What's wrong?" Buxiu said with a bitter expression, "Dad, I'm hungry." In addition to eating a little congee in the morning, he had not eaten anything for a day. He had no feeling during the training, but once the training was over, the feeling of hunger surged up and he felt weak. Bu Zheng breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this and said, "Who made you, this stinky kid, practice for so long at once? Wait, I'll go get you some food." Buxiu obediently nodded and sat on the bench, not wanting to move. After wolfing down 2 large bowls of noodles, Buxiu patted her stomach comfortably and felt like she had come back to life. Diligently packing up the dishes, Buxiu sat next to Bu Zheng and curiously asked, "Dad, what is the name of our secret school?" Buxiu could feel that the meditation method she used was extremely extraordinary. After running for 1 week, her soul power would increase significantly. After a day of cultivation, Buxiu felt that her soul power was approaching the middle of level 10. Perhaps in less than a month, he can increase his soul power to the limit of level 10. In addition to the bonus of his talent, the contribution of his dark thoughts is also indispensable. Moreover, Buxiu can feel a sense of peace in her soul power, without any sense of emptiness. After careful observation, Bu Zheng finally confirmed that Buxiu did not exhibit any severe loss of vitality. He couldn't help but be surprised by Buxiu's strength in mind. However, considering Buxiu's astonishing intelligence since childhood, he also felt that it was normal. A naturally intelligent person has a stronger mind than an ordinary person. With an innate level 9 soul power approaching level 10, a powerful mind and intelligent brain, Bu Zheng had to admit that his child was a peerless genius, no worse than most people with innate full soul power. Upon hearing Buxiu ask about the name of Ming's thoughts, Bu Zheng's expression became more casual and he said, "I don't know what the name is. I wrote it casually, and if you're happy, you can give it a name yourself." Buxiu certainly didn't believe that this magical meditation technique was created by his cheap father himself, but he was also a bit excited about naming this meditation technique and said, "Dad, this technique is read backwards from the 1,000-character manual. Why don't we just call it the 1,000-character manual divine skill, abbreviated as the 1,000-character manual? The 1,000-character chart. Not bad, it's quite catchy, so let's call it the 1,000-character chart. Bu Zheng read it and stood up nonchalantly, saying, "All right, rest early, wake up early tomorrow, then wake up early every morning, meditate and practice in the morning, study with me in the afternoon, and wait until the start of the Nodding City Soul Master Academy 3 months later, you know." "Dad, I've become a Soul Master now, do I still need to learn?" Bu Xiu's face was bitter. Bu Zheng said lightly, "Soul Master, don't learn anymore. Besides, you're just a little Soul Master. What kind of Soul Master are you? Do you know the common sense of Soul Master cultivation? Do you know how to fight different Soul Masters? Do you know how to identify Soul Beasts, and how many years should each Soul Ring be fused with Soul Rings? Stinky kid, you're still far from becoming a Soul Master." "Yes, Dad, I was wrong. I will definitely study hard with you." Bu Xiu quickly admitted his mistake, realizing that Che's dad was going to teach him the knowledge of a Soul Master. That's right, besides some superficial things, Bu Xiu is completely clueless about the Soul Master profession, and there is still a lot to learn. Bu Zheng nodded and said, "All right, go sleep." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Tibetan Steps. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Tibetan Steps. The second day. At midnight, Bu Xiu had already woken up and practiced the 1,000-character manual under the supervision of Bu Zheng. This time, Bu Zheng did not use his martial soul to assist him, but his cultivation speed did not decrease in any way. Under the guidance of Bu Zheng, Bu Xiu's understanding of the 1,000-character manual technique took it to the next level. The 1,000-character manual is not an ordinary skill. The more Bu Xiu cultivates, the more he can feel the extraordinary nature of the 1,000-character manual's divine skills. This technique seems to involve not only the movement of soul power in the human meridians, but also a mysterious and profound understanding in the underworld. It seems that the more one comprehends the 1,000-character chart, the faster the cultivation speed will be. At noon, Bu Zheng somehow got a wild boar from somewhere and stewed a large pot of wild pork. Bu Xiu naturally indulged in it without hesitation, and after practicing, his appetite seemed to increase even more. Hunting an ordinary wild boar is not an easy task, thanks to the strength of my father's Soul Master and even the Soul Sect. There are ordinary animals in this world, but most of them are domesticated livestock from the human world. There are also wild boars, but not many. Most of the wild animals are soul beasts, which are difficult for ordinary people to hunt. After eating, Bu Zheng took Bu Xiu to the schoolhouse. It was currently a busy farming period, and the schoolhouse at Nuo University was empty. Even if it's just a child, it's impossible to study carefree in this world. During busy farming times, half-aged children are also one of the main laborers. Even if culture and knowledge are valued, it's impossible for children to go to school during busy farming times. Bu Zheng decided to give all the students a long vacation during the busy farming season. Coincidentally, Bu Zheng can also take advantage of this time to train Bu Xiu well. Bu Xiu walked straight into the school dormitory, and Bu Zheng stopped him. With a faint smile, he said, "What are you doing?" Bu Xiu was taken aback for a moment and said, "Didn't you have to go to school?" "Who said that what I'm going to teach you today needs to be done in the school building?" Bu Zheng walked to the center of the playground outside the school building and said, "Today's first lesson, I'll teach you the basics of Soul Master first. Save your life. Protect your life." Bu Xiu had some doubts, how to teach, protect your life. Bu Zheng ignored him and continued, "A gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. Soul Masters are also human beings. In addition to having resurrection skills, Soul Masters only have one life. To survive in the Soul Master realm, life preservation is the first element. Before starting the formal teaching, let's play a game of hide and seek. I won't use any Soul Master's abilities, nor will I leave the playground in front of the school. If you can touch me, even if I lose." Bu Xiu smiled and asked, "As long as I touch you, I win." The playground is not big, and although Bu Zheng is an adult, it is not difficult to encounter him without soul power. Bu Zheng only said that he cannot use soul power, which does not mean that Bu Xiu cannot use soul power either. Bu Zheng looked at Bu Xiu's confident expression and smiled, "Let's talk about it after you touch me first." "Dad, you're so little." Before Bu Xiu could even finish her sentence, her eyes flickered with a flash of energy as her soul power reached her legs and she pounced on Bu Zheng. Although there is no soul skill, the use of soul power is not just for releasing soul skills. With the blessing of soul power, Bu Xiu's strength and speed cannot be measured by a child's body. Moreover, Bu Xiu deliberately confused Bu Zheng with language, which was unexpected. Bu Xiu doesn't know what Bu Zheng's confidence is. But he didn't believe that Bu Zheng's unwavering appearance had no reliance on him. However, this loss, cheap dad can take it. A smile appeared on Bu Xiu's face, and Bu Zheng was only a stone's throw away from him. But in the next moment, Bu Zheng's figure flickered, and Bu Xiu only felt his eyes flicker. Bu Zheng had already disappeared in front of him. Bu Xiu suddenly turned around, but still couldn't see Bu Zheng. Bu Zheng seemed to disappear out of thin air without any signs. A bit clever. However, the speed is still a bit slow. A faint voice came from Bu Xiu's ear, as if leaning against her. Bu Xiu quickly grabbed towards the direction where the sound came from, while also looking back. Claw did not catch anyone, and even to the surprise of Concession Show, there was no one behind. But as if deliberately trying to stimulate Bu Xiu, Bu Zheng's voice rang out again in another direction. When Bu Xiu looked over, there was still no one around. Bu Zheng's voice kept ringing around Bu Xiu, but no matter how much Bu Xiu observed, he could never find his whereabouts, as if Bu Zheng didn't exist at all. However, the constant transmission of that voice proved that Bu Zheng had never left. "Kid, give up. You can't even see me, let alone catch me." Bu Zheng sounded with a faint smile beside Bu Xiu. Bu Xiu also stopped at this moment. He believed that Bu Zheng would not deceive him. Bu Zheng did not use soul power or soul skills. With such a magical body method, Yi Xiu was also curious about the origin of his cheap father. Similarly, there was also some excitement in his heart, and he certainly knew the reason why Bu Zheng displayed this magical body technique in front of him. How could he not be excited to have the opportunity to learn such a mysterious body technique? However, Bu Xiu still had a hint of youthful pride and unwillingness in her heart. Although she itched with this magical body technique, she didn't want to just give up. Yellow talisman paper. Bu Xiu whispered and a yellow talisman paper appeared in her hand. "Go." When Bu Zheng's voice rang out again, a yellow talisman paper flew out directly. The speed of the yellow rune paper is much faster than his speed. When he first awakened his martial soul, Su Yuntao, the great soul master, never caught the speed of the yellow rune paper. A yellow talisman paper flew out. Bu Xiu didn't seem to care whether the yellow talisman paper could hold Bu Zheng in place. The fingertip of her right hand, hidden under the sleeve of her blue shirt, once again pinched a piece of yellow talisman paper. When the line of sight changed, the yellow talisman paper hidden in the sleeves flew out like an electric light. "Good kid." Bu Zheng's figure walked out with a satisfied smile on his face. A yellow talisman paper was attached to his shoulder, which was the first one to fly out, and the first yellow talisman paper did not unexpectedly fall through. "What do you see?" Bu Zheng asked with a smile. Bu Xiu nodded. Shadow step. This is an evasion technique he learned in his previous life in the game, using the blind spots of the characters in the game to dodge and attack, and it is also so elusive. Bu Xiu believed that Bu Zheng would not lie, so he disappeared directly in front of him without using soul skills. No matter how much he changed his perspective, Bu Zheng did not appear, so there was only one explanation. Every time he changed his perspective, Bu Zheng had already hidden in his blind spot. "It's a blind spot, Dad has been hiding in my blind spot," Bu Xiu affirmed. With an appreciative smile on his face, Buzheng said, "It took me 10 years to come up with this truth. Your child actually saw it for the first time, but it's not just a blind spot in vision. There's also one point, I call vision focus. A person's field of vision may seem extremely broad, but most of the time, their consciousness only pays attention to what they want to see and ignores other things. I call it field of vision focus. In fact, when I was competing with you earlier, it appeared in your field of vision more than once, but you just didn't notice it." Buxiu recalled that there seemed to be a memory of Cheap Dad appearing in her sight, but why didn't she pay attention at that time? Bu Zheng looked at Buxiu's recollection with a hint of pride in his eyes and said, "It took me 10 years to understand this truth, and another 10 years to integrate it and create a hidden path step. A gentleman hides his tools in his body, and 1,000,000 soldiers are in front of me. I can come and go freely without any swords or weapons." Hidden steps. Bu Xiu murmured, with a hint of longing in her eyes. Never underestimate any genius in the world. In this world that only values martial souls, Haotian's sect has also created unique skills such as the Luan Pai Feng hammer technique and the Dasumi hammer. In the inheritance of the 7 treasures and glass sect, there is also a distracting control technique that is versatile. Bu Zheng can create such a magical body technique alone, even if it's just a soul master or soul sect. His talent is definitely unparalleled in the world. "Do you want to learn?" Bu Zheng asked with a smile. "Think." Bu Xiu nodded without hesitation. "Okay, then I'll teach you. When you learn the hidden path step, you'll have to help me do something." Bu Zheng's eyes flashed with a hint of nostalgia and pride, saying. Bu Xiu smiled proudly and said, "Dad, have you finally shown your confidence? There is indeed an enemy in our family who wants me to avenge you." The trace of nostalgia in Bu Zheng's eyes dissipated and he said angrily, "Don't daydream. I just remembered a promise I made during my youth's emotional struggle. What I wanted you to do was not to seek revenge. Forget it. Do you love to learn or not?" "Don't, Dad, I'll learn. I promise you, won't I?" Bu Xiu looked pitiful. Bu Zheng smiled directly and said, "Zhangdao Bu requires the coordination of soul power, totaling 3 levels of realm. The first level of hiding is to be able to hide the body, use blind spots and focus to significantly reduce one's sense of presence, and achieve the ultimate goal. I can be like this today, right by your side, but you can never discover me no matter what. The second level of hidden weapons can conceal murderous energy. Top soul masters have a keen sense of aura, and during battles, they rely not only on their eyes, but also on their consciousness and spirit. When you reach this level of cultivation, you are the most terrifying assassin in the world. The third hidden way is that the Great Way is invisible. By taking this step, you can truly disappear from this world, but even I have never reached this level. Triple realms, each of which makes people feel relaxed and enchanted. The meridian diagram corresponding to the triple realm is incomplete on the 9th, 17th, and last pages of medical records. The operation diagram on the last page needs to be supplemented by yourself, or you can wait for decades. Maybe your father and I will make up for it." Bu Zheng said nonchalantly. Judging from his appearance, he probably didn't intend to make up for the triple realm. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. 9 Exams in Heaven. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 9 Exams in Heaven. The next half of the time, Buxiu spent meditating and practicing soul power, while the remaining half of the day was spent learning the hidden path steps with Bu Zheng. In his spare time, Bu Zheng will teach Buxiu some theoretical knowledge about identifying soul beasts and martial souls. Buxiu is mostly clear about some major directions and won't step on thunder, but some details need to be carefully supplemented. In the midst of intensive learning and cultivation, 3 months have passed in almost the blink of an eye. In the courtyard, 2 figures, one big and one small, chased back and forth, flipping up and down. It can be seen that their body movements are constantly changing, adjusting their direction with the help of changes in their environment and each other's vision. If an outsider breaks into the courtyard, they may even ignore the two people chasing each other. After about half an hour, the two finally stopped. Bu Xiu was panting heavily, while Bu Zheng's expression remained unchanged. Using the Zhangdao step greatly consumes Bu Xiu's soul power and stamina. In the words of Bu Zheng, when Bu Xiu can integrate Zhangdao Bu into his life and subconsciously use Zhangdao Bu in every word and action, then the first step of his Zhangdao Bu can be considered a true achievement. The theory may sound simple, but in practice it is not that easy. When Bu Xiugong learned the Zhangdao Bu, he could have made countless mistakes. If it weren't for the fact that Zhangdao Bu had truly become divine and unpredictable in Bu Zheng's hands, Bu Xiu would even suspect that this thing was of no use. Fortunately, after countless failures, Bu Xiu finally touched the threshold and made progress, and his subsequent cultivation became more and more proficient. Bu Zheng nodded and said, "Not bad, you have already started your hidden path step and are more than enough to deal with some low-level soul masters. That's all for today. Take a break, pack up your things, and go to Notting City with old Jack tomorrow to learn. Notting City Soul Master College starts every year in autumn, and tomorrow is the start time." Tang San went with Bu Xiu. Due to the emergence of a soul saint in the Holy Soul Village, there is an annual quota for working students to study at the Soul Master College in Notting City. However, due to the emergence of two seedlings with soul power in the Holy Soul Village this year, after Bu Zheng agreed to accept the admission of several nearby children to the school, another quota was obtained. These villages share a quota, but none of them have any children with soul power. It's better to give it to Holy Soul Village and exchange it for a chance for the children in the village to study. Anyway, if there are good seedlings next year, it won't affect the quota for next year. Therefore, both Tang San and Bu Xiu can go to the Soul Master Academy in Notting City to study. Bu Xiu had long known about this. Tang San's quota for studying at Notting City Soul Master Academy was suddenly requested by Tang Hao from old Jack. Fortunately, Bu Zheng and his son had already anticipated this and there was no conflict over this quota. "Dad, my soul power has reached the limit of level 10 for a long time. When will you take me to merge the first soul ring?" Bu Xiu thought of something and asked. When a soul master reaches the bottleneck of level 10, they must hunt a soul beast and fuse its soul ring to break through. However, even if not fused, soul power will accumulate. Bu Xiu's soul power had already reached the level 10 level of perfection 2 months ago, and there was no room for improvement. However, at that time, he was learning the Zhangdao step, and his physical and soul power were indeed increasing, so he did not mention it. Now that she is about to go to Notting City to study, Bu Xiu plans to merge the first soul ring and gain some self-protection power. His hidden path steps are beginner level, and even a typical one-ring soul master may not pose any threat to him, but he only knows how to escape and won't fight. It is still safer to have a soul ring. Moreover, the teacher of Notting City, who breaks through the sky, is a great soul master, and may not be able to bring much help to his fusion of soul rings. Moreover, as a powerless and useless soul master, there may not be any teachers willing to help him obtain soul rings. Soul beasts are quite dangerous. Even if a great soul master enters the soul hunting forest, he may die there. Unless there is a certain benefit or a deep relationship, no soul master will actively help others obtain soul rings. My cheap dad is just a soul master, so Bu Xiu doesn't have to put in a lot of effort to find someone else. However, Bu Zheng fell silent for a while. After a while, he looked at Bu Xiu and asked with a serious expression, "Sure, tell Dad, why do you want to become a soul master?" Seeing Bu Zheng's serious expression, Bu Xiu also became serious. After careful consideration, she said, "Dad, the reason why I want to become a soul master is probably because I want to live well." The light in Bu Zheng's eyes dimmed a bit. "Then, go see a broader world." Bu Xiu lifted her head and looked at the vast expanse of blue sky. God gave him another chance, so is he really willing to live a mediocre life like this? Bushido may seem cynical, but in the past 3 months, after being exposed to the world of soul masters, no matter how hard and tiring it may be, there has never been a trace of slackness, and he has been practicing and learning seriously. For a child, even if they live their entire life again, when Bushido passed away in the previous life, they were still young and had an uncertain mind. They persisted in doing something for 3 months without any slackness, indicating that their heart was still full of longing for the world of soul masters. Bu Zheng seemed to see Bushido's thoughts, and a strong light reappeared in his eyes. He said, "Sure, if you believe in me, then in the future, don't let anyone help you with every soul ring you merge. Moreover, the soul ring you choose must not be inferior to others. Why not let others help?" "Dad." Bushido's eyes were full of doubt. The strength of soul beasts is even stronger than that of soul masters. Usually, when soul masters merge soul rings, they need their elders or companions to deal a heavy blow to the soul beast, and then the soul master who needs the soul ring will end the soul beast's life and merge the soul ring. Tang San in the original work is like this. With the help of others, he repeatedly broke the limit of the fusion soul ring, occupying a great advantage among his peers. If there is no help from others, not to mention the difficulty in obtaining a soul ring. Even if one obtains a soul ring, the lifespan of the soul ring may be relatively low, and the strength improved after merging soul rings will be weaker than others. After accumulating several times, one step behind, and finally the gap between Tianjiao and ordinary people. How can a genius from a major sect be stronger than a soul master from a commoner background? The reason is that the elders of the major sects will choose the most suitable age for each of their fusion soul rings. Moreover, when the first soul ring is fused, the soul master only reaches level 10 without any soul skills, and is relatively young. Without the help of other soul masters, there is almost no possibility of obtaining a century-old soul ring. Even obtaining a decade-old soul ring is very difficult. 10 years of soul beasts will not actively and obediently run in front of you. If you go to the soul hunting forest, you may encounter any situation. Letting a level 10 soul warrior hunt soul beasts and merge soul rings on their own is almost a search for death. But Bushido believes that Bu Zheng must have his point in saying so. Bushido looked at Bu Zheng with pitch-black eyes, wanting to hear the reason why Bu Zheng said so. After a moment of silence, Bu Zheng said, "If your dream is just to live well, then I will help you hunt down the soul beast that best suits you. However, if your dream is to see a broader world." "Sure, do you know what the widest world is for a soul master?" Bushido remained silent, and now Bu Zheng gave him a strange feeling. Bu Zheng did not wait for Bushido's answer. His eyes flickered with a fiery gaze and he said firmly, "It's God, God's world is the widest world. To become a god, you must pass the level of merging soul rings yourself. My father once saw in an ancient book that the reason why a soul master needs to merge 9 soul rings to achieve the ultimate goal is because this is the 9 divine tests given by heaven. Only soul masters who have gone through 9 divine tests alone can climb the path of gods. So, if you want to glimpse the realm of gods, you must go through these 9 tests alone. Divine examination, the fusion of soul rings is a divine examination given by heaven to every soul master." Upon hearing Bu Zheng's answer, Bushido also fell silent. This world has gods. But Bushido's method of becoming a god is not this. One is to gather the faith of sentient beings and become gods, and the other is to inherit the position of the ancient gods, each of which is much more difficult than the 9 tests of gods mentioned by Bu Zheng. "Dad, can you really become a god by fusing soul rings 9 times on your own?" Bushido couldn't help but ask. "God, if one can become a god, then relying on oneself to merge soul rings 9 times, even if one lives a life of 9 deaths, what is there to fear?" Bu Zheng shook his head and said, "It's not that simple. The 9 heavenly examinations are just a chance for everyone to generate gods. People who have not experienced the 9 heavenly examinations may also become gods. However, those who have experienced the 9 heavenly examinations will definitely have a greater chance of becoming gods. Moreover, those who have reached the 9 heavenly examinations will definitely be stronger than soul masters who rely on others to obtain soul rings at the same level. I have set you on the path of the 9 heavenly examinations, but one thing you need to remember is that even if it's the same exam paper, different people will give different scores. If you want to succeed in the 9 heavenly examinations, then you must reach your limits on each exam paper, so that you have a chance to become a god on the first line. This is a life or death path, but as long as you step out, the world will also be engraved with your name. Dad, I will definitely embark on the path of the 9 exams in heaven. Bushyo said firmly. Establishing a divine kingdom and collecting beliefs is not Bushyo's style. Relying on the mercy of others is too cheap and not his wish. Even if the 9th exam is difficult, there is only a first line style, and he will try it out. He also wants to take a look at the scenery above the gods. At least, with the presence of hidden steps, he wouldn't miss a chance. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Not in College. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Not in College. For Soul Masters, each fusion of soul rings is like an exam. Once you pass the exam, you can improve by one level and explore a wider world. The difference is that each person only has one chance to submit their paper in each exam. Moreover, this is an exam without an invigilator. Some people choose to have senior students copy the answers in their own hands and then copy them, while others can only rely on their own abilities to take exams. Regardless, the former can always achieve higher grades than the latter, but this does not mean that the latter will not be able to achieve the former's results, it will only come at a greater cost. Similarly, taking Tang San as an example, Yu Xiaojiang is such a senior student. However, Yu Xiaojiang is inexperienced and his skills are a bit crooked. The first time he helped Tang San cheat on an exam, he happened to come across an exam paper that he couldn't even do. Fortunately, Tang San was smart enough to create this exam paper himself. Now, what Bushyo needs to do is to rely on his own strength to do the exam paper, which is the heavenly 9 exams. God is fair to everyone. You can deceive God, but God will also put away his favor towards you. This is the true essence of the 9 heavenly examinations. For Buzheng not helping him hunt soul beasts, Bushyo was only grateful without any complaints, grateful that he had a good father who allowed him to walk on the right path. Moreover, Buzheng also took good care of him. He held a warrant from the soul-hunting forest of the Martial Soul Hall, which allowed him to step into any soul-hunting forest of the Martial Soul Hall at any time to obtain a suitable soul ring. On the Douluo continent, there are a large number of soul beasts, including several vast primitive soul beast forests, endless oceans, frozen forests in icy and snowy conditions, extreme northern regions, and even wilderness areas where soul beasts may live. For lower-level soul masters, the best choice to choose soul beasts to hunt soul rings is still in the soul-hunting forest of the Martial Soul Palace and the 2 empires. The Martial Soul Hall and the 2 empires will choose to enclosure in some places, capturing soul beasts that have been around for 10, 100, or even 1,000 years from the soul beast forest and releasing them in the enclosure forest. Over time, this place has become the best place for low-level soul masters to obtain soul beasts. The Soul Master world calls this place the Soul Hunting Forest. Only soul rings can be obtained in the Soul Hunting Forest, and nothing outside the soul rings can be taken away from the Soul Hunting Forest. In addition, every soul master who wants to enter the Soul Hunting Forest not only needs to verify their strength, but only those who have indeed reached the level 10 bottleneck and need to obtain soul rings can enter the Soul Hunting Forest. Entering the Soul Hunting Forest does not require payment of any fees, but at least 3 nobles are required to jointly guarantee and obtain specialized certificates in the Martial Soul Hall. The warrant given by Buzheng to Bushyo is such a certificate, and it is unlimited in number of times. That is to say, as long as Bushyo reaches the corresponding level, he can go to the soul-hunting forest to hunt soul beasts and obtain soul rings, which saves him a lot of effort. After all, it is not easy for a child without any status or connections to obtain such a token. Carrying the soul-hunting warrant from the Martial Soul Hall, Bushyo dressed in a blue cloth long shirt and carried a package to old Jack's house. The long shirt was still the same as before, washed clean. In the past 3 months, Bushyo has grown a bit taller, but fortunately, the Qingbu long shirt is already quite large, so there is no need to change clothes. The package behind Bushyo was a change of clothes, some dry food, a 1,000-word book, and a medical book. Bushyo could already recite these 2 things backwards, but he still instinctively carried them with him. Bushyo still had 3 gold coins given to him by Buzheng in his arms. The purchasing power of gold coins in Douluo continent is very high, and 10 gold coins are enough for a family of 3 to consume for a year. 3 gold coins are not too many, but also not too few. Buzheng also made it clear before Bushyo left that these 3 coins were all his savings in the past 6 years. In the future, if Bushyo wanted coins, he had to earn them himself. He had no money left. The study at Notting Junior Soul Master College is free for working-class students, who only need to bear their own food expenses. The college also has some volunteer work to meet the living needs of working-class students. Ah Shio, did you come so early? Old Jack couldn't help but sigh when he saw the talented Bushyo. Bushyo really inherited his father's temperament and appearance. He was elegant and peaceful, completely different from those from rural backgrounds. Only those from big cities have such temperament, right? Grandpa Jack, Dad said Notting City is quite far from the village. You can either leave early or come back early. Bushyo said obediently. Notting City is at least half a day away from Holy Soul Village, and it is absolutely impossible for old Jack to stay overnight in Notting City. After old Jack sends them to Notting College, he will definitely rush back overnight. Once in a while, it might get dark. Old Jack is also quite old, and Bushyo doesn't want to trouble old Jack too much. If it weren't for her lack of understanding, Bushyo would rather go by herself. He's not really just a child like he looks, and going to Notting City is not considered a long journey. What's there to be afraid of? Upon hearing Bushyo's words, old Jack couldn't help but nod with a smile and said, okay, what Teacher Bu wants is stability. Let's go to the village and pick up Tang San. Let's go to Notting City together. Not long after, old Jack picked up Tang San, and after bidding farewell to Tang Hao, the 3 of them walked towards Notting City together. Along the way, Tang San asked old Jack some questions, and old Jack answered everything he knew one by one. Bushyo didn't interrupt and listened silently. There are some things in old Jack's words that are right, but there are also many mistakes and omissions. After introducing the systems of Notting College and Continental College, old Jack couldn't help but once again focus on Bushyo and Tang San. He could also see that Bushyo didn't say much, but his personality was relatively calm and sometimes he didn't seem like a child. Tang San's words were similar to Bushyo's, but he was curious about soul masters and the outside world. Old Jack fell silent for a moment and said earnestly, Axiu, mistress, we are almost at Notting City. After arriving at Notting City, you will meet a wider sky. In the academy, you will also make many new friends, but I hope you don't forget the friendship between them. Anyway, you all went out of the same village, grew up together, awakened your martial soul together, and luckily have the opportunity to become a soul master. If the other party encounters difficulties in the future, they must support each other. The outside world is not very beautiful, and soul masters also need partners. You have at least one more fellow townsman identity between you, who awakens martial souls together. It is more trustworthy than outsiders, isn't it? You are all sensible children, and you should know what grandpa means. Third, you are a little older than Axiu, and you also have to take on the responsibility of being a brother, right? The two of them were almost silent at the same time. Although it was the same village, they were not really familiar with each other. "I will, Grandpa Jack, don't worry." Tang San nodded and said. "After all, it's from the same village. If you can take care of it when you go out in the future, consider it as a reward for Grandpa Jack's care over the years." Bu Xiu also nodded and said, "Grandpa Jack, I will do it too." Old Jack nodded in satisfaction and said, Okay, you're all Grandpa's good children. If Grandpa's grandson had as much confidence as you, that would be great." The three of them set off quite early, and one morning, the thick walls of Nodding City had already appeared in front of them. Nodding City is not considered a large city, but it is also located on the border of the Heavenly Do Empire, and the city defense works are also built more solidly. After some inspections at the city gate, the three of them entered the city. Both Old Jack and Tang San looked indifferent towards Nodding City. They had seen such a city more than once and had long been accustomed to it. On the contrary, Bu Xiu was curious about this ancient city wall and gate. "In my past life, only some scenic spots had such ancient city pools, but unfortunately, Bu Xiu never went there once. Therefore, Nodding City was actually the ancient city pool he had seen for the first time." Old Jack looked at Bu Xiu and smiled, saying, "Nodding City can only be considered a fourth-level city in the Heavenly Do Empire. After you become Soul Masters, you can go to larger cities. The walls of those cities are truly magnificent. I heard that the walls of the Heavenly Do City, the imperial capital of our Heavenly Do Empire, are hundreds of meters high and there are millions of people living inside. Xiao San, Axiu, I will take you to the entrance of the college and then go back. You must listen to the teacher's words in the college and not leave easily. I will pick you up again after the semester ends." "Grandpa Jack, are you going back so soon?" Tang San felt a bit flustered and instinctively said. Old Jack gave a bitter smile and said, "Xiu should be aware that hotels are not affordable for us poor people. Third, Xiu, you must strive for excellence. Next time I see you, I hope you have become Soul Masters. If that's the case, our village will be proud of you." Nodding College is located in the west of Nodding City. Old Jack asked for directions several times and finally arrived at the destination. From a distance, you can see a tall arch, which is repaired by pitch-black rocks and is over 20 meters high. Under the arch, there are a pair of iron fence gates. Behind the iron fence, a winding path leads straight to the depths, with tall trees on both sides. On the arch, there are 4 big characters written. Nodding College. Having truly witnessed Nodding College, even Bu Xiu was somewhat surprised. It was just a small-town college, in his opinion, comparable to elementary and middle schools in his past life. However, Nodding College's scale was already comparable to some third-rate universities. Bu Xiu had already attached enough importance to the profession of Soul Master, but at the moment he saw Nodding College, he felt that he still underestimated the status of Soul Master. Nodding College is just a junior Soul Master college, equivalent to a primary school in a previous life, but in a relatively backward feudal society, the extraordinary power of being able to cultivate such a college cannot be underestimated. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Masters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Masters. The three of them walked towards Nodding College, but as soon as they reached the gate, they were stopped by a young guard who said, "What are you doing? Is this where you rural people can come?" "Here we are." Bu Xiu remembers a scene like this. Although Old Jack and their clothes were very clean, there were inevitably patches, which were not enough to look at in the city. The young gatekeeper looked at Old Jack somewhat contemptuously. Old Jack quickly apologized and said, "This little brother, we are from Holy Soul Village. These 2 children are working-class students sent by our village this year. Do you think we need to go through what procedures?" The gatekeeper furrowed his brows and said with a somewhat sinister tone, "Can the golden phoenix still emerge from the grass nest? Even a person from a small village can have soul power, or are there 2? The college hasn't had any working students for a long time, so you're not fake, are you? A hint of anger flashed in old Jack's eyes as he was about to take out the proof given to him by Su Yuntao from the martial soul hall. A figure had already stopped him. Bu Xiu approached old Jack and said gently, "Grandpa Jack, leave it to me." Bu Xiu casually crossed over Jack, and a hint of surprise flashed in Tang San's eyes. What a clever footwork. Are we counterfeit goods that have nothing to do with you, but have you made plans to offend two future soul masters at the same time? Bu Xiu's tone was flat, but the brilliance in her eyes made the gatekeeper instinctively take a step back. I was actually scared by a child. The gatekeeper was a bit embarrassed and angry. What future soul masters? I see you're just here to bluff and deceive. Get out of here, get out of here. The gatekeeper said he was coming to push the step show. A light yellow light converged in the palm of the hand, and a yellow talisman paper appeared. With a flash of light, the yellow talisman paper had already been pasted on the gatekeeper's body. Bu Xiu took a step to avoid it, casually avoiding the gatekeeper's pushing and saying, "My martial soul only has one ability, which is poison. If you want to cut off your children and have no descendants, you can take a step forward and give it a try. Don't talk nonsense here. You don't even have a soul ring. How could a martial soul have attack power?" The gatekeeper shouted, but he was somewhat fierce and didn't dare to step forward. He is just an ordinary person. How much does he know about the abilities of soul masters? He only knows that when he didn't react, the yellow talisman paper had already been pasted on him, and he became even more afraid of Bu Xiu's methods. He was just trying to extort money. Previously, newcomers would show some signs when they arrived, but the other party didn't show any signs. How could he not be angry? Bu Xiu said indifferently, "Do we still need a soul ring to bestow the venom of a venomous snake? Could it be that without a soul ring, the sword martial soul cannot chop people? If you don't believe it, you can give it a try. My martial soul is a 7-step morning talisman. If you don't take 7 steps, you will forever lose the ability of a man." "You're talking nonsense." The gatekeeper panicked and wanted to tear off the talisman paper attached to his body. Who wouldn't be afraid of losing any abilities in a normal man? "Enough, stop it." Just then, a slightly hoarse voice rang out. The gatekeeper was stunned for a moment, and his expression suddenly became flattering. He nodded and bowed to the newcomer, wanting to greet them, but he was afraid of the yellow talisman paper on his body and did not take any action. "Master, you are back." The newcomer is a middle-aged man who looks slightly older than Bu Xiu's father. He is in his 40s, of medium height, and has a very ordinary appearance. He has both hands behind his back, and has a special temperament that is somewhat similar to Bu Zheng. However, he lacks Bu Zheng's recklessness, and is a bit more decadent and lazy. "Sir, can you show me the martial souls of these 2 children?" said the master. Old Jack instinctively glanced at Bu Xiu, and for some reason, he seemed to regard him as the backbone. Bu Xiu nodded. The master took the martial soul certificate, looked at it, and then looked at Bu Xiu and Tang San. After pausing on Tang San for a while, he said, "There's no problem with the certificate, sir. I apologize to you on behalf of the academy. Leave these 2 children to me, young brother. Please also take back your 7-step morning sun talisman martial soul." His gaze was also a bit strange. Bereaved son. What kind of peculiar ability is this? Bu Xiu raised her hand with a move, and the yellow talisman paper dissipated, transforming into soul power and returning to her body. During this period of research, Bu Xiu has also figured out that without the fusion of soul rings, apart from being able to fly and stick, the yellow talisman paper martial soul has no other abilities. The 7-step funeral sun talisman is even more absurd. It's just something he uses to scare people. Evil people still need their grinding. Encountering such a petty person as a gatekeeper, one can either save money and avoid disaster, or can only intimidate the other with absolute strength. If he has money, Bushido doesn't mind spending money to avoid disasters, but I'm sorry, he doesn't have money. No need to apologize, master. Then these two children will trouble you, mistress, Axiu. You should follow the master and be obedient. Old Jack waved his hand. An apology from a soul master greatly satisfied his vanity, and he also suffered no losses. Old Jack reminded the two of them again for a while before leaving. The master gave the gatekeeper a faint glance and said, "This is the first and last time. Not every soul master is harmless to humans and animals, even if it's just a soul master. This child was right, he can make you lose the ability of a man forever." A cold sweat dripped down the gatekeeper's face and he hurriedly said, "Thank you, master. Thank you, little brother. I won't do it anymore, I won't do it again." The master squeezed out a stiff smile on his face, grabbed their hands, and said, "Let's go in." The three of them entered the college, and Tang San said, "Teacher, thank you." "Teacher. I'm not a teacher from this college. Besides, I didn't help you. I should be grateful to the gatekeeper." The master lowered his head and glanced at Tang San and Bushido, saying indifferently, "Not a teacher. But you just said you represent the college." Tang San was surprised and said, "Then you must be the president or leader of the college, right? You, a 6-year-old child, are quite clever, but you guessed wrong." The master smiled and looked at Bushido, saying with a smile, "Are you called Bushido? Bu is a rare surname. Bushido, do you know what identity I am? Isn't a master an identity?" Bushido thought for a moment and said naively, "Huh, you're such a smart child. A master is indeed a status, but a master and a teacher are different. You can't mix and match in the future unless." The master's eyes lit up and he said, "You really want me to be your teacher? Master, do you want to teach us how to cultivate martial souls?" Tang San asked. The master stopped and stood in front of the two, "Are you willing?" Tang San remained silent, without answering or agreeing. The master smiled and exclaimed, "What a clever child with extraordinary talent. Bushido, you should already have some knowledge of soul masters, but I think your martial soul is not a 7-step morning talisman. The morning ability is also fabricated. Your true ability should be auxiliary. An auxiliary soul master with innate 9th level soul power is not inferior to a battle soul master with innate full soul power. And Tang San, you should say that you are the second owner of a twin martial soul in 100 years. What is your other martial soul?" After listening to the master's words, Bushido remained non-committal. With the master's ability, it was normal for him to even guess and judge these things. Buzheng also told him that most soul masters in Douluo continent are uneducated and inexperienced, and most martial soul theories are based on continuous learning and guessing. Just listen to a lot of things, but what you learn on paper is shallow, and you must practice it. Only things that have been practiced are the truth. The master is such a theoretical school, with profound theories, but its correctness cannot be guaranteed. And such a theory is too incredible for Tang San, who has only just come into contact with martial souls. When he was surprised, he also became a little more cautious. The secret of twin martial souls is one of his biggest secrets. The master smiled and said, "You must be very curious about how I would know." The master shook the martial soul certificate in his hand and said, "Because of it, others cannot see it. If even I cannot see it, I am not worthy of the words master. The innate soul power is at level 9. How could such soul power appear on a useless martial soul? A piece of paper can ignore the level and stick it on other people's bodies, so there is only one explanation, which is the auxiliary martial soul. Many auxiliary martial souls are relatively fragile before attaching soul rings, and this is also more easily overlooked by people in the martial soul hall. Besides you, Tang San, as I said, the 9th level of innate soul power cannot appear on a useless martial soul, and the innate full soul power is also impossible. However, your martial soul is blue-silver grass. I have studied hundreds of people who possess blue-silver grass martial souls, and only 16 of them have soul power, all of which are first-level soul power. The potential of blue-silver grass is beyond doubt, but you are different. If you are innate full soul power, then there is only one explanation. You also have a martial soul, and it is an extremely powerful martial soul. Can't it be a special case? Tang San asked. The master confidently said, "That's right, everything is unexpected. Within 100 years, there are only 2 people who have twin martial souls, but there are more than 10 people with innate full soul power. Most of them inherit the strong bloodline and martial soul of the family, but there are also a few people whose family bloodline is not noble and their martial souls are equally strong. This situation is called a martial soul mutation, but according to my research over the years, blue-silver grass has not mutated with any martial soul." "What is the variation of martial soul?" Tang San asked. The master patiently explained, "This starts with the question of how to inherit martial souls. Generally speaking, soul masters will inherit the martial souls of their father and mother, which is family inheritance. But there are exceptions. The source is also the parents' martial souls, but their martial souls have a certain degree of variability. The descendants' inherited martial souls may be mutated martial souls, which may mutate even better, or even have innate full soul power, or even worse. It's like a close relative union, which is likely to produce idiots, but it can also give birth to geniuses." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. 7 Houses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 7 Houses. Tang San nodded, took a step back, distanced himself from the master, knelt on both knees, and respectfully kowtowed 3 heads to the master. The master was stunned and said in surprise, "Tang San, what are you doing?" "Teacher," Tang San said respectfully, "please accept me as your disciple." The master smiled with satisfaction and pulled up Tang San, saying, "Silly boy, get up. You only need to bow when you become a disciple, no need to kowtow. Kowtowing is a courtesy to your parents and the king." Tang San stubbornly said, "One day as a teacher, one lifetime as a father. You should be worshipped by me." The master looked at Tang San with a moved expression and said, "A day as a teacher, a lifetime as a father. Good, good, good. It seems that I didn't make the wrong choice." The master looked at Bushio and asked, "Bushio, are you also willing to be my student?" Bushio smiled apologetically and said, "I understand the kindness of the master, but I already have a teacher." "I see." The master nodded, somewhat disappointed. Although he had Tang San as his disciple, Bushio was undoubtedly a genius. The innate 9th level soul power of the auxiliary department was indeed not inferior to the innate full soul power of the battle's soul master. However, since the opponent already had a teacher, he couldn't force it anymore. There are 2 types of teachers in Douluo continent, one is to teach everyone, and the other is 1.on.1. A soul master can only have 1 or 2 1.on.1 teachers in their lifetime. No wonder this person has a certain understanding of martial souls at a young age. It turns out they already have a teacher. "However, Bu Xiu, if you don't know anything, you can ask me," said the master. "Thank you, master." Bu Xiu nodded. "Axiu, your teacher should be referring to Teacher Bu, right? Teacher Bu is your father, so it shouldn't affect you to worship others as teachers." Tang San saw the disappointment in the master's eyes and couldn't help but say, "Bu Xiu, is what the mistress said true? Is your teacher your father?" The master was also moved upon hearing this. Bu Xiu nodded. The master smiled and said, "So that doesn't affect your apprenticeship anymore. The things your father teaches you can be considered your family's education, and it won't limit you from learning from others. If you're willing, you can also learn from me." Bu Xiu shook her head and said, "Master, I'm sorry. As Xiao San said, one day is a teacher, and one lifetime is a father. Although my father is my father, he is also my teacher and a guide on the path of my soul master. So, besides him, I don't want anyone to become my teacher. This is my persistence. 1000-character chart, hidden path steps, 9 tests in heaven. Although Buzheng only taught Buxiu for 3 months, during these 3 months, Buzheng has opened a door to the divine for Buxiu. What he needs to do now is not to go on the path of apprenticeship and learning from others, but to move forward firmly along this difficult road. The master seemed to see Buxiu's firmness and smiled, saying, "Your father has a good son. Since that's the case, I won't force him anymore. Let's go, I'll take you to the teaching office to report." With Tang San as a talented disciple, no matter how extraordinary his martial soul may be, his innate soul power is one level lower than Tang San, and there is only one martial soul. How could he possibly match Tang San? The interior of Notting College is not as large as it appears outside, mainly consisting of the administrative building, teaching area, playground, and dormitory building on the east side of the playground. After the master brought the two to the teaching office, he gave a few orders and then left. The education office is managed by an elderly person in his 60s, with 2 young teachers working on it. There is a certificate from the Martial Soul Hall, and after filling out some forms, one teacher couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the certificates from the 2. Innate Full Soul Power, Innate 9-level Soul Power, one is blue silver grass, and another is grass paper. Unfortunately, Tang San, there is one thing I want to remind you. In theory, a soul master can only have one teacher throughout his life, whether he is in the academy or going out. When choosing to apprentice, you must be careful, master. The teaching director glared at him and said, "What's wrong with the master? In terms of theory, he is an invincible presence and just right for this child." "Alright, Tang San, Buxiu, your dormitory is in the 7th dormitory. There will be a life teacher who will arrange the work of your part-time students there." "Thank you, teacher," the 2 of them said obediently. The 2 of them each left the teaching office with a brand new school uniform. Tang San looked at Buxiu beside him and frowned, asking, "Buxiu, do you also think that a master is not a good teacher?" After Buxiu rejected the master, Tang San's expression towards Buxiu also became somewhat indifferent. Buxiu shook her head and said, "Master is a good teacher, and in some ways, he is also quite suitable for me. However, Tang San, would you hire a blacksmith as your teacher?" "Of course not, what my dad taught me has already." Tang San fell silent. Buxiu smiled and said, "Look, you wouldn't even apprentice to other blacksmiths. Isn't it normal for me not to apprentice to other soul masters?" Tang San nodded and respectfully bowed. "Dao. Learned. It's okay, let's go." Buxiu waved his hand, "Everyone has a different experience. Tang San is a disciple of the Tang sect, and Tang style has penetrated deep into his bones, but it doesn't mean he won't admit it wrong. There are a total of 7 dormitory buildings, and Notting College has a total of 6 grades. The total number of students is only over 200, not too many, and on average, there are only over 40 students in each grade. The number of soul masters placed in a small city is not too many or too few, but these 200 or so students are already capable of becoming a soul master until the end of graduation. The vast majority of them are 10-year soul rings, and their future potential is limited. Each grade has 1 dormitory, and regardless of the grade, work students have a separate dormitory. Of course, it's not that Notting College is so conscientious. The dormitory environment for purely work students is the worst among the 7 dormitories. The 2 of them had just arrived at the dormitory when a loud noise came from inside the door. The door was wide open, and inside was a large room of over 300 square meters, with a total of 11 sets of bedding. At this moment, there were 7 or 8 children aged 8 to 12 clamoring inside the door. "Oh, there's a newcomer here. We haven't had any newcomers in a long time," a child saw Buxiu and Tang San and said. A burly, half-grown child walked out and looked down at the two of them, new working-class students. Surprisingly, two of them came at once. "Hello, we are working-class students from Xinghun village," Tang San said politely. The tall boy said, "My name is Wang Sheng, the Soul Warrior Tiger. The future Soul Warrior is also the leader of this place." "Kid, what are your names? What is the Soul Warrior?" Tang San frowned and said, "My name is Tang San, and my martial soul is blue silver grass." "Bu Xiu, martial soul yellow talisman paper," Bu Xiu said. When Bu Xiu revealed his martial soul, Tang San's eyes flashed with a hint of exploration and surprise, but quickly disappeared. Perhaps he was overthinking it. Teacher Bu has a wide range of knowledge and is still a soul master. Perhaps there are also talismans in this world, but not necessarily. Blue silver grass, yellow talisman paper, when will these chaotic martial souls also be able to cultivate? Wang Sheng shouted loudly, and the child behind him burst into laughter, looking at them like idiots. "Can you tolerate this, mistress?" Bu Xiu smiled faintly. Even though he had a good temper, he felt that these children needed to be cleaned up. Tang San gave Bu Xiu a faint glance, still smiling, and said, "Can you please make way?" "Xiao Sanzi, Xiao Xiuzi, didn't I make it clear? I'm the boss of Qixia, and you all have to listen to me in the future, you know." Wang Xingji said arrogantly, coming up to push Bu Xiu next to Tang San. In his opinion, Bu Xiu's instigation just now is a questioning of his authority, so he needs to take a good stance and teach the other party the rules. "I don't know how to fight, mistress, it's up to you." Bu Xiu took a step back, her figure flashed, and she had already retreated behind Tang San. Wang Xing's pushing and shoving also suddenly retreated to Tang San, pushing him back a few steps. The smile on Tang San's face disappeared. He walked aside and placed his school uniform on a bed. Amidst the puzzled gaze of others, Tang San took an extremely fast step and arrived behind Wang Sheng, without turning back. He elbowed Wang Sheng's waist and extended his right foot. Wang Sheng didn't even react and stumbled out, but fortunately, the trading remained stable and he didn't fall directly. "Stinky kid, dare you hit me?" Wang Sheng was furious and turned around like a fierce tiger descending the mountain, rushing towards Tang San. With a punch from Wang Sheng, Tang San did not retreat but instead advanced. His right hand changed and he grabbed Wang Sheng's wrist. With one pull, Wang Sheng had already flown out and fell onto a bed. Is this controlling the crane and capturing the dragon? Bu Xiu was shocked. After all, they are people who have traveled through the world of martial arts. There is a huge difference in their combat experiences between Tang San and Bu Xiu. Even though Bu Xiu has learned the hidden path steps, in terms of combat experience and moves, Bu Xiu is far inferior to Tang San. This kind of Tang San relied on his sleeve arrow to win against the 400-year-old mandala snake, narrowly escaping death before having a certain level of strength. Never go to the soul-hunting forest to hunt soul beasts. Bu Xiu once again warned herself in her heart. He does want to take the 9 heavenly examinations, but he also doesn't want to die. For soul masters, the first exam of the 9 heavenly exams is the most difficult one. Low soul power, lack of soul skills is only one aspect, and more importantly, the body has not yet fully developed, leaving a huge gap compared to adults. Even though Bu Xiu has grown a lot taller in the past 3 months, but is only over 1.3 meters tall, she is already tall by the age of 6, but still much lower than adults, let alone physical strength. Before relying on it, going to the soul-hunting forest now is completely seeking death. When Bu Xiu lost his mind, Tang San had already fought with Wang Xing again. Wang Xing's body was shining with a faint yellow light, and he had already used his martial soul. However, in front of Tang San, he was still too immature. Before long, Wang Xing lay on the ground again. Tang San seemed somewhat unhappy and looked at Bu Xiu, asking, "Xiu, why don't we also have a sparring?" Buxiu shook her head and said, I don't know how to fight. I am a scholar, and reading is okay. It's not enough for me to fight. Let him fight Tang San now. Buxiu is not a fool, how could he go find Ma now? End of this chapter.